Hello. Dear friends, we are now in the day 92 of the war, and that's really incredible. When I look back to the first days when I started recording these updates, it was extremely tense, extremely scary, and we have been going through various weeks and various stages of the war, from extreme shock and fear to feeling almost triumphant, to feeling depressed because of terrible atrocities that are happening, to feeling again tense about the situation. And this kind of emotional swing is extremely exhausting for everyone. I can imagine that many people lose focus on what's happening in Ukraine, and it's very natural. I'm not blaming anyone for that. I'm hearing from many people from the West that various celebrities' court trials are in the media hotspot right now, and many other news replace the news from Ukraine. But what I would urge you to not to lose this focus completely, to be with us in this terrible situation we are experiencing, the world is experiencing right now, because it's clear that the repercussions of the war in Ukraine are felt and will be felt all over the world in various forms, starting with the wave of refugees that are usually accepted with great hospitality and great sacrifice by people, starting with the neighboring countries like Poland and all the way to Portugal, to Ireland, or even to the United States and Japan. Even such country like Japan, that are usually quite closed to migration, have opened their borders and officially accepted like several thousand of Ukrainian refugees that by some kind of way happened found themselves eventually in Japan, and it turned to be extremely hospitable country for Ukrainian refugees. But also other repercussions will include, for example, dangers of hunger, or at least shortage of food supplies in many countries, especially near Eastern and African countries, because of the destruction of Ukrainian agricultural industry and impossibility to export agricultural goods from Ukraine because of the blockade of Ukrainian ports. I want to record just brief video today to give you a feeling what's going on here. I understand that less and less people are watching these videos because, as I said, people are tired, and I myself is tired, and I'm thinking maybe I should stop recording those videos altogether. I will be informing you still from time to time, but probably not as often as I used to, unless something extraordinary happens. But as of now, we are in the middle of what they call the battle for Donbass, and unfortunately the military campaign is not limited to Donbass only. It's also touching some other regions of Ukraine. I will show you a few maps in the course, but let me just tell you that despite a seeming de-escalation, as it might seem from the media, the situation is extremely tense. We are not getting any more all those reports from like tens of Ukrainian towns and cities with extreme violence happening there, but so the violence, the conflict zone kind of shrank to part of the territory of southeastern Ukraine, but there it's a real hell. It's extremely intense fighting, extremely intense shelling and use of artillery. It's really the war of artillery that we're going through, and we're getting this news reports or private messages from people being killed by artillery, both militants and civil population. Just to give you a taste of what is going on, I stumbled across this brief video that shows the strike of a Russian heavy fire throwing system called Solntsepek. It's a Russian word for like sunburn. It will just give you this kind of surreal picture of the modern warfare and how these weapons of mass destruction actually work. It's, thanks God it's not nuclear, but if you see how it explodes, it's really, as I say, surreal, and one can just imagine what people who are in that territory feel like. Watch that. Just another raccource. These are like extremely powerful fire throwing systems that produce gas, and then this gas is mixed with the air and then explodes in an instant. So it creates like a huge wave of fire and pressure and explosion. So what's just another nice picture, well, nice, I mean illustrative picture showing the results of heavy fighting on Ukrainian fields. Obviously those fields will not be used, cultivated this year, and who knows when they will be cultivated again. Looking at the map of southeastern Ukraine, you can see in orange and red the areas of the most intense fighting. Generally speaking, Russians changed their tactics from waging powerful advances on many fronts. They rather focused on this kind of arc you can see in orange and red. This is the territory of the Luhansk and partially Donetsk regions of the so-called Donbass, and their objective is to get to the border of Luhansk and Donetsk regions, and then to have these two regions integrated into Russia. Another area of fighting you can see again down an orange line. It's Kherson region and Russian advances towards Mykolaiv and Zaporizhia. So this is the southern part of Ukraine with most fertile land, heavily agricultural, and it's considered by Russians the territory of the so-called New Russia, Novorossiya, which they want to create. So they will have like belt leading to Crimea Peninsula, and there are already official talks in Russia about joining these territories officially to Russia. So there will be something like a fake referendum or just a proclamation on the part of Russian authorities that these lands will be joined to the Russian Federation, as Crimea was joined before. There is heavy fighting going on everywhere with very small advances of Russian troops. They have accumulated all the weaponry, all the manpower they had in Ukraine, mostly in this arc of Donbass, and are pressing forward with some successes. As you can see from those red arrows, they managed to break through the front lines in several places. Ukrainian army is massively overpowered, both in terms of technical supplies, military equipment, and manpower, and but it's still doing its best to keep the front lines, and there is no like massive escape of Ukrainian soldiers. They are drawing backwards slowly to avoid massive casualties. Well, the casualties are massive anyway. We are speaking about hundreds of soldiers dying probably every day. We don't have any precise statistics. but the advance of Russian troops is relatively small. First, they wanted to encircle the troops from, as you can see, the ends of this arc. Now they probably will not be able to do that, but they created a smaller encirclement, a smaller arc, where you can see the red territory in the end of this arc, and there is a real danger of Ukrainian troops being encircled there. We will see how this will develop. Unfortunately, Russians still have a lot of reserves, especially in the manpower, but also guns and all the artillery and rockets. And the help that has been promised by Western governments is arriving to Ukraine, but is arriving much more slowly than it should be, than it was promised. And military experts have been saying over the past days that we are losing the race in the pace of replacement of our troops, and especially replacing old weapons with new weapons. So if this continues, if Western governments are still so slow with providing weapons for Ukrainian soldiers, the front line will move slowly but steadily towards the west ever further. So we need really to speed up those weapon supplies and to make them as effective as possible. Otherwise, we are just paying for every day of delay with hundreds of human lives, both civilian and military. Needless to say that in these fighting areas, especially in the cities that are jammed there in this encirclement, Russians use the same burnt earth tactics as they used in Mariupol. They are just wiping those cities out by heavy shelling and bombardments and all that. So hundreds of civilians die. All the civilian infrastructure has been destroyed already. Many buildings, majority of buildings in the cities that are there are destroyed, and it's extremely painful to watch videos on the internet what is left from those towns and cities. Yeah, here's just another map showing that intense fighting area in the context of the larger map of Ukraine. So the gray area is the territory of the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, the separatist republics, and the red pink areas are the areas that were occupied after February 24. Another bad news is that again there is some motion in Belarus, that Belarusian troops are kind of moving towards the border with Ukraine, bringing some heavy machinery, heavy weapons, and we are worried that there might be a second attempt on the part of Russia to force Belarusian dictator to send his troops to invade Ukraine. Which obviously will be bad for the whole overall situation, because we will need to relocate many troops from the east of Ukraine to stop the aggression from Belarus. We hope this will not happen, and we hear voices of people from Belarus, even some military officials and military people who are saying this will be a suicidal campaign on the part of Belarus. But the last months have shown that if there are mistakes, they will be done. Unfortunately, neither Putin nor Lukashenko ever avoid making any terrible mistakes. So we are afraid this might be just another one. There was a report yesterday by the UN that 1.4 million people are forcibly relocated from Ukraine to Russia. I mentioned that before because the process started already in March. There were some skeptical voices saying, oh, this is not true, this might be like refugees who went voluntarily to Russia. But no, actually now it's officially stated by the United Nations that a huge number of Ukrainians were taken captives, basically taken from the fighting zone and given no choice to leave the fighting zone in the direction of Ukraine, but they had to go to Russia. A small number of those people managed to sneak out through Baltic countries, so they entered Russia and then somehow found their way to the border with Lithuania or Estonia and managed to leave Russia. But absolute majority of those people are kept in Russia and sent sometimes all the way to far east, to Siberia, to Sakhalin Island, to the territories that are underpopulated. There are not enough people to work there, so they are sent like in a social package to settle in some abandoned Russian Siberian city to work there. They are given some money for rent an apartment, but they are not free to leave the country. The worst part of that is obviously children. And the children who are with the parents is one thing, but we are also hearing about a huge number of children who lost their parents either in the fighting or were orphans before. They were from all the orphanages that are now under the Russian occupation. Children are often evacuated to Russia, and Putin has signed a kind of law allowing those children to be adopted by Russian families without unnecessary formalities, which obviously can lead to terrible abuses and crimes, and we do not know what will happen to those children. The best case scenario, they will be just adopted by Russian families and their Ukrainian origin will be erased from their memory. The worst case scenario obviously is that they can end up in some kind of sexual slavery or other terrible criminal situations. So this is the situation as of today. We are praying hard for our soldiers, for people who find themselves trapped in the fighting areas. The wave of refugees is much smaller these days, but still there are people who are internally displaced, relocated, or leaving the country, going to Western Europe or other countries. And we still ask for your support, for your pressure on your governments to be more effective in their help to Ukraine. It's not even question now of money. The US government was very generous and the European governments are very generous, but just the question of speeding up and making this help much more efficient is extremely important. Thank you for watching. Please share this video. If you still can, please help our volunteer initiative. I will place the PayPal account under this video. We are spending the money for a little help to the soldiers or purchasing medical equipment. We thank you for your support, and please continue supporting us with your prayers, with spreading the information, and if possibly with donating little money to our initiative. Thank you very much.